Hello, 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 and welcome into episode number 2 of the Bear Claw Media Podcast. I am Chris Bolin, and I am joined once again by Ben Schleiger. How you doing tonight, buddy?
Good. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing good. You know, we got some official preseason polls. Weather's starting to cool down. It's probably just it's a ruse this time, and I'm sure it's going to be 100 in this time tomorrow already, but it
Right. You'll
feels
be
like
cooking
football
and jamming in that room, soon enough.
but it feels like football season's officially getting underway. So I'm excited. Today we have some players we were going to highlight on the UNC team. We don't have too fancy of a gimmick. I guess we'll just call it 7 players to look out for, unless you have a better title. We probably should have talked about this before we started, but do you have anything better?
Right into it. We got seven dogs we're gonna highlight on here. There's a lot of talent on Lamb's team, and no disrespect to anybody who's not on the list. These are just guys that we see already taking leadership roles and just dominating on the field. So these guys that we're going to talk about tonight, it's not a limited list by any means.
Yeah, and after that, we will do a little preview on the Week 1 Abilene Christian game, and then kind of look around the Big Sky and FCS Week 1, talk about a few interesting games, maybe any potential upsets over FBS teams. For full transparency, we're recording this August 13th, so just before 9 p.m. Mountain Time. So we're cheating it a little bit because I am getting married here in 7 days. So give me a little round of applause because I think that will have happened by the time you listen to this. But
Spoiler alert, he's already married. He's just making it official with the wifey and getting a nice party going.
Yeah, we gotta have a wedding if we want to get wedding gifts.
Right?
But yeah, without further ado, let's get into some UNC football. Okay, first up, let's start where just about every football team starts, if that works with you, Ben. Quarterback Jacob Sermon. He's 6'5", 230-pound senior. He played in 7 games last year for the Bears, backing up Dylan McCaffrey. He was 52 for 93, 55% completion, 595 yards and 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Limited sample size, kind of. He got some good run, but wasn't ever the guy by any means. What are your expectations, thoughts, opinions on Sermon going into this year, Ben?
So I think Bears fans alike, just with other conference fans, will be excited to see Sermon. One of the upsides to him is that he's a big gunslinger type quarterback who's also not afraid to run it. A lot of people were excited about him last year whenever Dylan went down because, that just wasn't going well. That offense was stale and stagnant. We know why he didn't get in. But the times that he did get in, he really juiced up the offense. We really moved the ball down the field a lot better. Sermon's got a big arm. He's really cerebral as well. So having that and then just an inspiration at the quarterback of talent and just knowing what to do with the ball further than 3 to 5 yards down the field is going to be a big improvement for the Bears offense. So just having that diversity and parity in our offense should make it a much more dangerous approach because people won't just be expecting the slant or the curl at 5 yards.
Yeah, and having a guy like Sermon has to be nice, I guess, for lack of a better term, for Ed Lamb. A first-year coach as part of what most people would call a rebuild. it is a rebuild. I don't want to call it one, but I feel he didn't have to go into the portal to get his guy. He had somebody on the roster. And it's not like he's just making do with some average Joe. Sermon was a 4-star coming out of high school. ESPN #1 prospect in Washington that year. #2 pro style quarterback overall. And he hasn't exactly lived up to that with his stops at CMU after the University of Washington, but going into his senior year as the guy has to inspire confidence that he probably hasn't had really any other year along the way.
Well, and I think a big confidence boost as well is he's one of those marquee players that stuck around. He stuck around to see what Ed Lamb was going to say in that initial meeting. He and some of the other guys were very interested in it because, this is his last year. He's bounced around. He's got a lot of different experience at different schools, especially 2 FBS schools. So he knows what works, doesn't work, and he has the leadership to step up. I mean, he had those beautiful long goldy locks, and he's like, nope, keeping this season clean, keeping it focused. Did away with those gorgeous locks. We'll have to look for him a little harder on the field. But Sermon's just one of those guys that he dug into the program. He committed to it. He's making it his team this year, hell or high water. And there's a couple other guys on the team that we'll talk about tonight that chose to stick around. And I think them being dedicated to just stick it out with a core group of guys like that is going to make a big difference.
Yeah, speaking kind of on Sermon's experience, I think at Big Sky Media Days, he mentioned that he's played for 5 coaches and 7 offensive coordinators since he's been in college, or that may have been including high school now that I'm thinking about the numbers. But you're right, he has seen a little bit of everything, I'm sure. And I'm sure, especially with McCaffrey last year and having that many different coaches, makes it a little easier to see through the bullshit. And it seems like with everything I've heard that he's really bought in to what Ed Lamb is saying. Lamb said that the night he was announced as the head coach, he got a call from Sermon just introducing himself, saying hello. And it's great to have that type of leadership, that type of maturity from the quarterback position.
Yeah, I think that's a big step up from us. I mean, we're used to players just coming in for a year, doing great or not, and leaving. So for him to really dig in and show that initiative, that's pretty exciting for us.
Yeah. Do you know little fun fact, he had a Sports Stars of Tomorrow feature on him when he was in high school. I don't know if you remember those. I think they were on CBS at 2 p.m. when CBS didn't have an afternoon football game,
Nice.
So if you grew up without cable, you probably saw a few of those. But yeah, I watched that earlier today, and he was recruited by Chris Peterson, when Chris Peterson was at Washington. So, he great quarterback developer. His path could have turned out a lot different. We never would have saw him at UNC.
That's right. We're lucky to have him, and we'll take him for this year.
All right. I think that's all I have for Sermon. Moving on to probably, I'd say, consensus best player on the team around the conference and around the country. Linebacker David Hogue, 6'3", 240-pound redshirt junior. He was hurt last year, suffered a knee injury before the season even started, missed the entire year. But before that, he had a phenomenal 2021 season. 3rd team All-American, according to AP and Stats Performance. 1st team All-Sophomore by Hero Sports, and 2nd team All Big Sky Conference selection on the defensive side of the ball. Having Hogue back is got to be music to Lamb's ears, especially trying to get this defensive unit working the way it needs to.
Yeah, that'll be a big inspiration for us. And I keep on saying that of inspiration because Lamb really is inspiring these players, you know, talented, mediocre, and just guys who are just trying to make the team alike. These guys are all just really buying in, and Hoag's one of those guys who he's gotten, I think, 6 different watch lists that he's on, and that's with him not even playing for a year. Everybody really bought in and saw how much talent he had, what his ceiling could be. I mean, in terms of player comps, obviously it's pretty big between NFL and FCS, but I like to liken him to Von Miller, as he's not a super heavy D end. He could definitely play coverage, but his swim move is pretty elite. He's really earned his spot on the Bucky Buchanan list, even not playing a year. So having him this year, I mean, all we are just hoping for is just a good, clean, healthy season from him. But the ceiling that he could give us, just having a quarterback rush on one side of the ball, that'll be fantastic. We had almost no pressures last year on the edges. We relied on some of the guys that we'll talk about later on for that pressure up the middle. So having somebody on the side will be fantastic. And I mean, shoot, if he's even receiving votes for the Buck Buchanan later in the year for best FCS defense player, that would be pretty outstanding. I don't think UNC has seen that since our D2 days.
Yeah. Oh, look at you go, Ben. Speaking of kind of the D2 days, last year he set the all-time D1 record, or not last year, 2 years ago as a sophomore. I tried to get too cute with it. He set the all-time D1 record with 10.5 sacks. So I think a lot of people are interested to see what he looks like coming back this year. And we'll get into it a little later, but week 1 will be a great test with Abilene Christian, left tackle Reese Moore, a senior, I think 3-year starter. So that should be a great test right off the bat to see where Hoag is coming back off of that injury.
Yeah, that'll be fantastic. I mean, starting out against a good team, but a good team in a lower conference, that'll be a solid start for him to see what he's worked on. Everybody said that he's gotten a little bit more muscle on him, but he's even faster at this point. We're just jonesing to see him on the field.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think moving on, number 3, we have Jordan Napke, 6'3", 210, redshirt junior. He's a safety. Honestly, similar to Hoag 2 years ago, he played one series against CU at that game we were at Folsom Bend before his season was over. But he bounced back well last year, 90 tackles, 2 fumbles recovered, 3 pass breakups. What are your expectations for Napke this year? He was, along with Hoag, the other preseason Big Sky pick that the Bears had.
I think Napke's probably one of my favorite defenders in the last couple of years that a lot of people might not hear about necessarily until he gets on the watch list and be like, oh, who is this kid? He's just an absolute dog. I mean, like 6'3", 210, like you said. Like this guy plays every bit of it. He's up there high pointing balls in the back of the secondary, and he lowers the boom. Like there's some of the louder hits I've heard at Nottingham have come from him, and it's just so much fun to see him out there. He's just an all-around player. Having him at safety really shores up the backside of our secondary in the sense of, like, if he has to play man-to-man, he can definitely do that. Zone, he knows where the ball is. He's good at high pointing it. And if somebody has the ball and is breaking free, he's good at not only bringing them down, but also forcing turnovers.
Yeah, and honestly, hopefully this year he doesn't have to make 90 tackles with Hoag back and maybe the front part of the defense a little bit stronger. But he's reliable. All last season you could just count on him. And it's exciting to see maybe if he can showcase his high-end talent a little bit more, if he doesn't have so much responsibility making up for mistakes.
And one of the things that you won't necessarily see unless you're on film is, people always say quiet defenses are dead defenses. This guy, he's out there, and even though he's in the secondary, He's very much into just shifting everybody where they need to be, helping everybody get in position. So if he's able to just focus on picks and hit sticks, that it'll be a crazy fun year for him.
Well, let's bounce back to the other side of the ball, back to the offense. Feel like we can probably do numbers 4 and 5 together. We have a couple pass catchers. First, wide receiver Ty Arrington, 5'11", 180, out of Utah, a junior, I believe. And then we have Alec Pell, a tight end from Cherry Creek, transferring from CU a couple years ago. Two of the three leading pass catchers returning from last season. So Ed Lamb has noted wide receiver was a position in need that he was going after this offseason. And he brought in a number of recruits, number of new faces to the wide receiver room. But these are a couple of the old reliables that we've seen over the past couple years. Any thoughts on either of them, Ben? Take it any way you want.
Yeah, these guys are great. Alec Pell, CU transfer originally. He was doing some linebacker, some offense over there, and he's just great. He's a big dude, but he gets open. He's not afraid to lay a block. Just overall, an all-around accountable tight end. He does all three parts of his duties well, and really just bails out the offense whenever needed. Arrington, a lot of the same. Just one of those receivers. He wasn't the leader in the receiving yards last year, but whenever Dylan or whenever Jake needed some sort of bailout, some sort of just reliable route, he was there and he was able to make separation that was a lot more noticeable than a lot of the other guys on the team. I think that's a lot where not only the gameplay got bogged down by just having bad play calls, but it was just the play calls were not matching up with the defenses, and Arrington always had a reliable sense of just breaking away, and even if it's 2 yards, he'd break away so that there's an option somewhere on the field. I thought that was pretty stellar by both of those guys.
Yeah, I should mention Alec Pell was named the number 22 returning tight end by Hero Sports and FCS. And I guess Jordan Apke was the number 22 safety. I forgot to mention that when we were going over him. But like you mentioned, Arrington wasn't the leading receiver from last year. The leading receiver is still on the roster, though, Zinicola, sorry. He was the number one guy from McCaffrey last year, but probably worth noting, he was a Valor guy. Ed McCaffrey coached him in high school as well. So we'll see. He was obviously talented, but we'll see if he gets the same sort of target share with Ed Lamb as the head coach.
Right. Still definitely a valuable receiver. Definitely had a lot of production last year. And I don't even think it was necessarily, any kind of nepotism related to the prior school knowledge or anything. It's just the routes were definitely curated for his talent set. And it matched up really well. He was really good on the slants across the middle. We're very lucky to have Zane still, and definitely the transfers that came in. Honestly, the receiver room got a lot better over the summer. We had some transfers come in, and Arrington's going full sunshine mode. He bleach blonded his hair and said that it's part of his commitment to have a clean season and buckle down, focus on football. So I think we'll be a lot better off, and hopefully, if we don't run 1,000 screens like we did with the McCaffreys, we'll have a lot more production across the board to spread the ball out to everybody.
Ben, without all those screens, how are the running backs supposed to lead the team in catches?
When you got Elijah Dotson, who scored 2 touchdowns for the Chargers, go. You may as well use them, but for the love of God, let's get some screens out of the way. Let's just put those on the back burner, keep them for a rainy day. I'm tired of seeing our running backs and receivers getting blown up because the defense is like, yep, probably screen.
All right, well, back to the defensive side of the ball. Nick Norris, 6'4", 262-pound D lineman, junior, originally from Fort Morgan. Had a very solid season last year. 68 tackles, 7 for loss, 1 sack. And coming into this season, Hogue has said he's seen great leadership out of him. Encouraging to see having some experience on the defensive side of the ball. Right as you take a drink,
No,
I
you're good.
pass
You're
it to
good.
you.
Nick is a great talent on the inside, and kind of like I was hinting at before, a lot of our production for quarterback hurries and quarterback sacks and tackles for a loss, it all came on the interior of our D line last year. Those guys pinching in just had the most success. Not that the guys on the outside weren't trying their asses off, but just consistently, the only really big success we were finding was just in that middle, just hammering away. And Nick Norris was one of those big guys, just tearing open holes and throwing down running backs and quarterbacks whenever possible. He made a big difference, and having him in the middle again will be a treat, especially with kind of that edge pressure that we'll have now. So having a local guy, even, it's great to have local talent, and I'm sure Lamb's gonna continue recruiting on that like he's promised. But this guy's from Fort Morgan. This is right in UNC's backyard. They should be super proud to have a local guy showing out as much as he is.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Ed Lamb has made a big point of Colorado kids. If the talent's anywhere close, we're going to take the guy from in-state, the guy from down the road. And he'd probably be pleased because 5 of the 7 guys we're talking about today are in-state guys, including our last one, a redshirt junior from Smoky Hill, linebacker Vincent King. He's 6 foot, 236. Had a good 2022 season, 66 tackles, 2 sacks, an interception, forced fumble. He did a little bit of everything for the Bears defense last year. What are your thoughts on King, Ben?
King is definitely one of the more fun players on this team. If you're not following him on TikTok, he's pretty hilarious. Yeah, again, another one of those great contenders for sunshine on the team, and this guy's just like full of fun, full of football talent, and when it comes down to the play being snapped, he's full of aggression. There's a really good highlight on Blake Olson's Twitter from practice of him high pointing a ball long down the field and getting interception, just getting so jazzed, throwing his helmet off, screaming and whooping and yelling. I want to see that on Saturdays, coming up for Abilene Christian Thursday night. But he's just such a great utility player. Kind of like, again, likening guys to we see on Sundays, I'd say is kind of like a mold of like Clay Matthews and AJ Hawk. He's such a utility linebacker that he not only has the ability to square up with a O lineman and go after the running back, but he can also drop back out in the flat, swat a ball away, knock somebody down, do what it needs to do. He's just a really great utility player.
Yeah, he definitely molded his game and his look after AJ Hawk and Clay Matthews.
Right.
You're right. I don't think anybody's touching him for the Sunshine Award on this team this year. Those locks are beautiful.
Yeah, it looks like he could get sponsored by Pantene like tomorrow.
Awesome. Anything else you want to say about the Bears this year? Oh, silly me. We did have a few honorable mentions before I try to force us into a break here.
Yeah,
We
there's a couple more
mentioned
guys you found some pretty interesting stuff about.
Yeah, we mentioned Zane Zinicola, top returning receiver. We'll see how he kind of fits in this system, if he can shine the way he did last year. Cameron Baldwin Taylor, a running back, freshman. It really seems like the running back room is open this year. Doesn't sound like anybody's really getting the majority of the first team reps. So I'm interested to see what role he plays, if any, if he doesn't redshirt. Because he had a handful of Power 5 offers, Arkansas, Pitt, Florida State, but he decided to come to Greeley, so I'm excited to see if he'll contribute this year.
Yeah, I think those are some great picks. Like we said, like Zane, like really good talent. He fits in with the talent that he's surrounded by. It's just we're gonna have to see what kind of system offensively that Lamb comes out with, and we'll see like which positions it benefits. I was gonna say with our roster, like we definitely padded the receivers, but we have a ton of tight ends. It'll be interesting to see how everybody gets used.
Yeah, my last guy, for no other reason than he's just an absolute unit, is a redshirt freshman, offensive lineman Aiden Moe. Our boy is 6'8", 304 pounds. He's gonna be playing on the edge because there's no way any quarterback's gonna be able to see over him to throw across the middle. He played in 3 games last year, was able to keep the red shirt, so we'll see.
Yeah, that's a big boy. Whatever he got to eat, I did not get the same meals as a kid. That's for sure. So good for him. Like glad to have just a big mauler on our team like that. Yeah, putting him to use, that'll be very useful.
All right, awesome. Well, we are going to take a little break, and we will be back to preview UNC's Week 1 game against Abilene Christian. All right, we are back here on the Bear Claw Media podcast. Week 1, UNC against Abilene Christian. Kind of an interesting history between these two schools. They played 17 times total, I believe. UNC is 6-10-1 in those games, but they have won the last 6. So they started off 0-10-1 against the Wildcats. The last 2 have been interesting. They played back-to-back years, 2015, 2016. In 2015, it was the final game of the season in Greeley, and the Bears won 40-36, securing their first winning season as a D1 program and their first winning season overall since 2003. So that was, I believe that was both our freshman years, wasn't it, Ben?
Yeah.
So that was an exciting time. Then the next year in Abilene, I think you touched on this last week or a couple weeks ago at this point, was the game Jacob Knipp got hurt in the first series, and Kyle Sloter came in and absolutely slang the ball around the yard, 25 of 32 for 408 yards, 6 touchdowns, tied the UNC single game passing touchdown record, earned himself Big Sky Player of the Week, FCF Offensive Player of the Week, and really kind of jump-started his career, I'd say. He started for the rest of the year, got a preseason tryout with the Broncos, and has made a living playing football ever since.
Yeah, I mean, good for Sloter. I mean, we've definitely had some quarterbacks move on, go to the pros, see a little share of some pro checks and whatnot, but Sloter's definitely made a sustained effort of it. And man, just watching that game on TV, that was crazy. It was just like, oh, there's more yards. Just like how far can he go? And it was like six touchdowns, 408, like you said, like just absolutely nuts. And I mean, we're all lucky as Bears fans that he got a chance to be quarterback, because before, when he was at Southern Miss, they had him as a receiver. They're like, no, we don't think you're accurate enough. Came here, just got a chance just by awful luck. Unfortunately, Nip had quite a few injuries, and that was just one of those unfortunate times, right? And yeah, that was an amazing game. Hopefully, we could have more of that.
Yeah, a couple other players in the UNC lore from that game. Trey Reek honestly went off both games running back from that era. He had 212 total yards in 2016 and 241 total yards in 2015. So Abilene Christian was not particularly potent on the defensive end during that era. But moving to this era, I think that actually transitions really well. Keith Patterson, a defensive guy, their head coach in his second season, taken over there after being the D coordinator at Texas Tech. He led them to their first winning season since 2018 last year. They went 7-4. So it should be an interesting test. But like you mentioned last week, the conference they're in, which is a story in itself, isn't really to the caliber of the Big Sky. What is it? Eastern Kentucky's picked to win that conference. They're 24th in the FCS preseason poll. There's 6 Big Sky teams ranked ahead of them. So this could be a really interesting matchup in week 1, especially kick off the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be a good test for the Bears. I mean, you always hate playing a game when it's not when you usually play. So Thursday night on the road in Texas, that's going to be a little bit of a count against them. Yeah, but I mean, like you said, going against a team who played well, but also played from a borderline trademark infringement type conference with taking United Airlines or American Airlines, one of those airlines logos from them. Looking at Abilene Christian, we can see the prowess of that defensive knowledge coming over, but offensively, it was not super impressive. They don't have a 1,000-yard rusher. They don't have a 1,000-yard receiver as well, so it's just a spread the ball out type. Nobody has any insane stats on the offense. The majority of their stats leaders for the offense are returning. So, I mean, it'll be a good game, but I feel like with them not going against the offensive juggernaut, such as like Incarnate Word, having them at home is going to help so much more to try to mellow that out a little bit. But going against a team that's not known for their offense, that should give our team a little bit of a chance to build some confidence and really work on developing some offensive chemistry. Defense, though, there's some scary guys on there. We're looking at that, especially in the secondary. There's some guys they need to watch out for.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier playing on a Thursday night in Texas. That is interesting for UNC. And kind of doing a little research before this, I saw Abilene Christian's actually been practicing around like 8 p.m. because the heat this time of year is just too much to deal with during the day. It is supposed to be a high of 96 that day, which is actually a little cooler than it has been the entire month of August. There's supposed to be the entire month of August. So it'll be interesting to see how much the heat plays into effect, how much it being on a Thursday night plays into effect, on top of all the normal first year coach, new regime, first game of the season, all those variables that are already in play, irregardless of the fact that it's a Thursday night game.
Right, and hopefully the trainers stock up on their Gatorade and pickle juice, because guys are going to need to have those electrolytes ready and have the trainers ready to stretch guys out so they avoid those cramps. So that definitely is a little bit of different conditions than we're used to. We don't usually get night games on our schedule because we can't have them at home quite yet. But going down to Texas
is so optimistic, Ben.
Right? It's in the works potentially, but
so close.
I haven't heard a lot of news on that front lately. But for the Bears, just going past adversity is going to be the message of the game. It's a different week. It's on the road. First time all together. First time putting it against different colored helmets than your own guys. There's a lot going on. As long as they don't get lost in the mess, it should be a competitive game. But we'll just have to see what they produce.
Yeah, I think it'll more than anything, non-conference first game of the year. You want to see what you have, and you're right. Good team out of a conference that doesn't really produce powerhouses. I think that's a great measuring stick for where they are. Um, all right. So we will take one more break here, and when we come back, we'll look at some Big Sky games week one and some more interesting FCS games from across the subdivision, I guess you could call it. All right, and we are back here on the Bear Claw Media Podcast. It's a busy week one for the Big Sky. All 12 teams in action. Is there any particular Big Sky game that you're looking forward to other than the Bears down in Abilene?
Yeah, I
Anyone
mean,
that
other
catches
than
your eye?
seeing our good old Bears go down to Texas and whoop some Abilene ass, looking across it, there's a lot of mismatches. So I think, we were really excited for Eastern Washington, North Dakota State when it originally got booked. I think as much as a marquee matchup as it was supposed to be, even being in Minneapolis, that one's going to be a bit of a letdown. I think across the board, it's kind of going to go chalk. I think there's only a few that might go one way or another, and I think that's probably going to be Central Washington and Weber State. I think that might be interesting, even though it's in Ogden. Central Washington has been known as a D2 power, not necessarily taking a whole lot of hardware home, but really shocking some teams sometimes and playing above their level. And I think us at Abilene is going to be one of the more competitive ones, kind of across the board. I think the FCS teams are going to lose to the FBS teams, and the D2 and the lower or transferring up teams are going to lose to the Big Sky teams.
Yeah, it is a busy week one, but honestly, it's not that interesting of a week one. Like you said, it feels pretty chalk. Um, as far as Big Sky games go, Cal Poly San Diego has potential to be interesting. I really don't know what to expect from Cal Poly. Uh, they weren't good last year, but people have been talking about them like they have potential to actually be respectable this year. So San Diego with a new head coach, I could see that one being interesting. Like you said, us in Abilene is probably right there is the most interesting one too.
And
Um,
you're right, San Diego Cal Poly should be interesting. There's a Colorado connection there as well because the new coach for San Diego is our old friend Brandon Moore over at Colorado Mines. So
oh.
that could be interesting having a defensive mind on there. Cal Poly struggling to have an offensive identity the past 3+ years. I mean that could definitely go either way. That might be one of the lower ones of like lower tier kind of like interesting games that might go either way.
Yeah, and you touched on it a little bit just a second ago, but there are a few FCS versus FBS games, but honestly, none of them really seem to stand out. Incarnate Word at UTEP, that one has potential to be interesting. We'll see how good Incarnate Word is. Selfishly, well, honestly, selfishly, if they won that one, maybe UNC could be the trap game week two. But um, other than that, Southeast Missouri State plays Kansas State. Chris Kleiman, I don't think he's going to let Kansas State lose to an FCS school. Um, yeah, Rhode Island at Georgia State. Uh, Northern Iowa at Iowa State might be interesting just for the in-state dynamic. But beyond that, I don't. None of them really caught my eye as potential upsets. Were there any that really stood out to you?
I think one of the bigger ones that you already mentioned, Rhode Island at Georgia State. I don't have a whole lot of faith in that one, but just in the sense that Joe DeLeon and Sean Anderson, those guys, former URI players, have really been kind of hyping up Rhode Island and thinking, maybe they might be able to do something this year. Georgia State, kind of like one of those lower, like makes a bowl game every so often type team. I think that could be interesting. But as far as like, is there like some huge FBS scalp that the FCS is going to come for and give a great hashtag fear the FCS moment? I don't see a lot of those. I think it's going to be a little bit more of just kind of like a surprising year of like, oh, we didn't see that was necessarily going to happen. Looking across the board, I think it might be a little bit of a dry first week to try to get any of those fear the FCS moments.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to put it. I think it will be a pretty dry first week. Even just in the Big Sky, I think coming up there are a few interesting ones. Idaho plays a couple FBS schools. I could see potential upsets there, but it doesn't seem like
Georgia
it's on the
could be
schedule
interesting if Georgia only plays the walk-ons.
Then it might be a 3-touchdown game.
Yeah, maybe. I think one of the few like non-traditional FBS games that might be interesting coming up for the schedule is Eastern Tennessee State against Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State being transitioning up to the FBS team. ETSU having a lot of success over the past couple of years. That might be one of those interesting ones that just barely counts as an FBS win. I mean, we saw Sam Houston State struggle a lot in their past seasons since they won the title got their title, trying to move up, trying to get their bag. And honestly, it's kind of been a little bit rough for them, having multiple FCS losses and just not looking like they really deserve that transition. So maybe Jacksonville State kind of gets in a little bit of a trap scenario there against Eastern Tennessee.
Awesome. Well, I think let's call it there unless you have anything else to add, Ben. My dog has been pawing at me to go outside for the past 10 minutes or so she's going to be excited.
Hey, there you go.
Thanks again for listening. Special shout out Nathan Louis Brand. We saw your comment. We didn't forget about you. Hopefully I didn't butcher your last name too bad also. We do plan on doing some FCS top 25 stuff. We talked about it a little bit here with just week one. But as the season gets going and we see a little bit more of these teams, we'll definitely discuss across the FCS a little bit more. It's just hard to get a preseason episode done getting married here next week.
But you can throw it on the polls as well because, everybody's like, preseason polls don't matter. And, 3 weeks in, we'll be like, wow, it changed a lot or it didn't change a lot. So we can reevaluate then, just like those FCS Fans Nations guys are like, throw the preseason out until week 4. So we'll reevaluate. We'll give the top 25 some love. But right now we're going to focus on getting Chris officially hitched and having some celebration.
Awesome. But thank you for the feedback, everybody who voted in the poll, anybody who commented, social medias, Reddit, anywhere you saw the podcast and gave it a listen. We really appreciate you. Please let us know. What do you want to hear? What can we do better? What do you like? What don't you like? Should I shut up more? Should Ben shut up more? Give us your feedback. We love to know. So signing off here. I'm Chris, joined by Ben. Have a great one.